Hello everyone, Ted here. As you can see, we're back with another video here at SkinClub. So we're going to start it off with a quick shout out. Shout out to you guys for watching the videos and reading all the articles. And of course, shout out to SkinClub for allowing all of this to happen. Now, for today's video, I've prepared something I think pretty interesting and something that we can't overlook. The fact that the CS2 Tier 1 calendar is incredibly stacked up. There's Tier 1 event after Tier 1 event after Tier 1 event happening. So today, I've decided we're going to dedicate this video to talk a little bit about the next up-and-coming big event by PGL is going to be PGL Bucharest 2025. Of course, $1,250,000 prize pool is going to be played in Bucharest, Romania. There's not going to be a live audience, but it's still going to be a studio event. It's still going to be a LAN event for the players. They're going to be there at the venue. So I thought, you know what, this is one of the last tier 1 events, if not the last tier 1 event before the MRQ and before the entire conversation starts shifting towards who's going to qualify for the major. So might as well give it a little bit of a go. And I think obviously the most exciting thing about those events is the fact that you don't have the best team. Well, you don't have the 3 best teams in the world right now. You don't have Vitality, you don't have Spirit, you don't have Mouse, and this one you don't have Navi as well. So that creates a lot of opportunities for everybody else to make something out of it and create name for themselves, so to speak, right? This is how the great streak of well-played events for Mouse started with the previous PGO event that they were able to win Inclusion and Polka over Falcons in the grand final when Vitality and Spirit were not there and Navi was not there. So hopefully we're going to get to see another really interesting storyline of a team that could actually capitalize on the opportunity. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about, and without further ado, let's get right into the action. Okay, so now we're here. As I told you, we don't have the top 3 teams in the world right now, and we don't have Navi either, if you want to throw them in the top 5 too. Although they're not really there standing by the VRS, right? We have the Mongols, we have Eternal Fire, we have G2, we have FaZe Clan, Falcons, 3D Max, Astralis, VP, and then we have Liquid, Gamer Legion, Pain, Fury, Rare Atom, Complexity, Apogee, and Legacy. Of course, some of those teams qualifying through the close qualifiers. For teams like Apogee, for example, is going to be an incredible experience being part of that type of an event. A really young team, Polish lineup with Jacob, who's actually a big talent, so I'd advise you to keep an eye on him. Legacy's been playing some good Counter-Strike in Brazil lately, so again, a team that is a little bit more familiar in comparison to Apogee. Dumal's been playing good CS, so they could potentially contribute to some interesting games and upsets. But all in all, this entire video is going to focus on my big favorites to actually steal away the event. I'm gonna give you 3 teams that I think are in a great position to actually win a tournament right now, in the absence of the rest. And then I'm gonna give you 3 more teams that I have big expectations of, but I'm not 100% sold on right now. And we're gonna try and shift the conversation away from the teams that we've already discussed on previous videos to a bunch of new teams. Now we're going to start it off with the most obvious one, and I think there's 2 elephants to be addressed in the room. The first one is going to be the Mongols. The Mongols have been one of the best teams in the world in the last half a year in terms of the Counter-Strike they play, in terms of the fundamentals they have, and in terms of the insane amount of firepower that they have. This team is just individually outclassing many. And on a good day, they could outclass some of the best teams in the world. That's why you see them lose only to some of the top dogs. Now, for the Mongols, I think now they've established themselves as a team that makes playoffs all the time. Every single time they're going to make playoffs, they're going to lose against a good team. You're looking at Blast Lisbon. They make quarterfinals. They lose to G2. They lose to Navi, but that was the G2 that was playing extremely well. And that was the G2 that had a heavy god and a Monacy fragging out, and even had a Snacks have a decent game, which is a rarity. So yeah, this game I think was a little bit disappointing, but they still make quarterfinals. Then you're looking at EPL, they make semifinals, they take down Navi, they take down 3D Max, they beat G2, they beat Gamer Legion. The only 2 teams that they lose to are Spirit in the group stage, and then a 1-2 loss to Vitality that, sure, you get absolutely decimated on 2 of the maps on, but you still get a map off of Vitality. And with how much better Vitality have been than everybody else, the fact that you're still stealing a map away from them and your name is not Spirit or Mouse is still impressive. So I think that was all in all, EPL could be considered a really successful event for the Mongols. Then you're looking at Inclusion and Polka. This is the one worrying sign for me. The fact that they were part of the redemption attempt of Astralis, Inclusion and Polka. This matchup, because I watched the majority of it, that was a really weird game. First of all, I feel like everything that Astralis could throw in as a spanner into the works worked. That, for me, that is personally an off day for the Mongols. I would say it was a good series by Astralis. I don't want to steal that one away. Stair played a fantastic game. Device was tuning up. Yabi had a good performance as well. But all in all, I feel like the Mongols probably should have won that. But that, for me, so far this year, out of the last 4 or 5 events, is the only game that I'm looking at and saying they lost it, they should have won it 100%. They're not playing against a team that is far better than them, not in the slightest. The Mongols, if anything, are the better team than Astralis right now. So I think we can close our eyes for this one. And the one concern I have, this is playoffs, but again, you're talking about the factor of the Mongols playing instead of or in front of live audience. There's not going to be any live audience in Bucharest, right? It's going to be a LAN event, but there won't be public. So, or any public, any audience. So I feel like this is a good opportunity that's going to boost them up even more. And of course, if we got to mention Kato as well, semifinals, you beat Eternal Fire, you lose to Vitality. Again, pretty self-explanatory. So I think the counterstrike that the Mongols have been playing, relying a lot on individual skill, relying a lot on, I guess, wilderness in a way in the server, but still having some solid fundamentals. I think that's going to work. And the fact that you don't get the pressure of the live audience is also good for a team like them. I honestly feel like they have a pretty tough draw with the first round playing against 3D Max, because this is again a team that I am considering one of the more interesting ones to follow once again. But yeah, I think the Mongols should be taking this one probably, and I really do see a world in which the Mongols make it out of group stage and then they start taking people down in the playoffs. The one worrying thing with those guys is that you can still see a world where it gets to the playoffs and they lose a best of 3 to FaZe Clan, or they lose a best of 3 to G2. I don't want to believe that they can lose another one to Astralis, but there's a couple teams that in the playoffs could worry me, but I think objectively that would be more the Mongols crumbling under the pressure and not them not being able to play better Counter-Strike, because I honestly believe that out of all the teams here, as of right now, they do play the best Counter-Strike. That is when Xantares is not online, obviously, if he's not gone into full beast mode. But even then, they are playing better Counter-Strike fundamentally, I'd say, than a lot of the teams. Or, you know what? I'm going to rephrase that. They're not playing better Counter-Strike fundamentally. They're playing really clean CS. They're fun. They know exactly what they want out of the round. They're not overcomplicating stuff. Their game plans are a lot more simplified than the game plans of a lot of the teams. But the way that they're executing it, they're getting the most out of their ideas. So I feel like they're an incredibly dangerous team. And I think they should be probably the #1 favorite to win the event. And that's not only because they're the highest seed. So yeah, the Mongols is my first one. My second one is, shockingly, Eternal Fire. And this is, again, no surprise. This is the second elephant in the room. One of the best teams right now, bar the top. With Eternal Fire is a little bit more tricky, though. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen the interviews with Xantares, with Major as well, saying that Burnout is getting to Eternal Fire. The main problem for me is the fact that they don't seem to be aware whether really it is the fact that they're playing a lot of games or there's other issues as well. The fact that Xantares comes out and says that he's got some health issues and he's been feeling really unwell and he's been in massive pain, this is not great, because obviously health should be first, right? You can make sacrifices for the game, but when you sacrifice your health for it, then you're gonna have to start sacrificing your game a lot more later on to actually fix the problem that arises. So I'm not sure what the situation is there. I feel like the only reason Eternal Fire is struggling right now is because of that burnout, maybe, and because of the health issues. But on a good day, Eternal Fire is still sick. On a good day, you're looking at Blast Open, a 2-0 win over Liquid, a 2-0 win over G2, a 2-0 win over Navi, and you're looking at some of the games. Navi had a massive off event. We can all agree on that. You're still beating them 13-9, 13-5. G2, I mean, they reached playoffs. You beat them 13-10, 13-10. You get really convincing CT sides, T sides. The closers weren't as clean. And then Liquid 13-7, 13-7. Eternal Fire can dominate teams. Eternal Fire can dominate the teams that they're supposed to potentially on paper be upset by in good circumstances. And the fact that they lose to Mouse, I, again, don't think that we can make too much out of it, because it was 2 really close maps as well. A 13-11 could be flipped by 1 round, and a 13-10, pretty much the same story, right? So sure, if we're putting Mouse in the conversation as one of the best teams right now, can't we say that Eternal Fire being that close to beating them? And sure, that's not how Counter-Strike works every single time, but I just feel like EF is such a tough team to be completely dominated, and they have a really high floor right now with their performance. Even when they're not feeling well, they can still deliver. And I feel like with the matchup of playing Pain first, and Pain is in a bit of a disarray maybe right now. Usually I'm a Pain fan, but I don't think they're in the best form ever. I feel like that's going to be a great opportunity for Eternal Fire to actually run away with an event finally. They could do it. Sure, they lost to Falcons last time, but the Falcons had a great run in Cluj-Napoca. Then this best of 3 against Tyler was mind-boggling, but they still made it out of EPL when they lost against Spirit in the quarters, which again we can't be overcritical of. They lose one map in overtime, then they win theirs, and sure it's a 13-7 on Mirage, but still a pretty close series that they could have ended up winning 2-0. So all in all, when you're looking at important games, they most of the time deliver. In group stages, they could make mistakes, right? They could lose to 3D Max. They even lost to Liquid, which in my eyes is a low ball, but I'm going to get to that. We're not talking Liquid with Chewy. I still feel like Eternal Fire should be one of those teams to be able to make it out into the playoffs. And when you compare them to a team like the Mongols, I actually don't think Eternal Fire would crack in playoffs if they were to play against the G2 or if they were to play against anybody else. I feel like the biggest enemies of Eternal Fire are Eternal Fire themselves. And with the absence of teams that they're just in general better than them, I feel like with Xantares coming up and having a good event, or if he comes up and has a good event, they could beat pretty much everyone in the tournament. So this is why they're my second favorite for the event. And my third favorite here, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because as I told you, I have, after I'm done with the 3 favorites, I have 3 more additions of teams that I'm interested in. But my third favorite to win this entire thing, shockingly, is Virtus.pro. And now you're gonna say, Ted is crazy. That's probably factual. I think Virtus.pro right now is the most underrated team in Tier 1 Counter-Strike. I honestly believe that. I do. I think if you're giving credit to someone like G2 that's incredibly inconsistent, that is playing Counter-Strike, that's incredibly reliant on someone going crazy and carrying the game, you can't overlook and underappreciate how progressively how much better VP have been becoming so far this year. It's obvious from the outside that the communication is becoming better and better by every single game. It's obvious that firepower-wise, this team is sick, but the individuals are feeling more and more comfortable as the events go through and the year progresses. And their performance in Blast Lisbon, honestly, I mean, filled me up with hope, right? You beat Face Clan. We already have all seen the 13-0 on Dust 2. That was an absolute abomination. You beat the Falcons as well, even though it was a really tough series, and you lose a map and you win those in OTs. It probably should have been a cleaner win, but the only 2 teams that you lose to are Spirit and Vitality. Now, the thing is, I don't think VP are ready to match up against those guys, and that's why I'd say they are far away from the top. They really are, but I don't think that's the full potential of this team. And I feel like when you compare it to some of the other events that we've seen from them, you're seeing lackadaisical results. But all in all, the only teams that are dominating Virtus.pro and that are making them look even foolish at times in the server are Spirit and Vitality, right? Sure, you lose Inclusion and Polka to Mouse, but you win their map pick, you lose your map pick, you get stomped on Mirage, but this is still a series that is a lot more competitive. You lose to Pain. Now, that was a bit of a weird one, but it's still not a 13-5, 13-5, right? It's not like you get kicked while you're down. And then you're looking at this 3D Max series, which they could have easily won in a 2-1 fashion. So VP as of right now are still showing some holes in maybe the game plan. Maybe people are not as comfortable just yet, but it's a slow and steady process of progressing further. And I honestly believe that the fact that they have been a little bit lackluster would make some of the teams overlook their potential. And the fact that Flammas just had one of his best events since the start of the year at Blast Lisbon, after he had a bit of an off performance inclusion in Kato. Obviously, they did miss EPL to try and prepare a little bit better and take a little bit of time off. And in that 1 month that they were away from the server, we instantly register improvements in their performance at Blast Open Lisbon. And I feel like with Electronic getting a little bit more comfortable, I feel like people have a lot more trust in him as an in-game leader now than maybe back in the days when he was trying to be an IGL before. This team just looks like it has incredible vibes and a really good atmosphere for Flamus and Icy to grow and be the star players that we know that they can be, especially for Flamus. I think that is really important. Flit is playing really well, and every now and then, even if it's once every 3 maps, we're seeing a star-like performance from Flit who can carry through. So I honestly believe that VP is the dark horse for this entire tournament for the trophy. I think they're one of the most interesting teams to watch because they could simultaneously not make it out of groups, but make it to the final as well. The start against Rare Atom, I think, is really good for them, and I feel like that type of a draw is the best way that things could go for them. Because if we're objective, they should destroy Rare Atom. That could get you on the right track, right? Let Flamus have a good game, let Flit have a good game, Icy, and then from that point on, try and build up the momentum and carry through. I feel like VP could make it and should make it out of playoffs, and I think they could do some serious damage as we progress further into the tournament. Next on are the 3 teams that I'm interested in watching, but I'm not sure how I feel about them. Number 1 is G2. G2 right now is the most inconsistent team in the world. One day you're going to tune into a G2 game and you're going to see m0NESY drop 35 kills over 2 maps or 40 kills over 2 maps and they win. No problems. Or Hunter go absolutely crazy. Or Malps have a good game. Or Heavy God. There's a lot of things that could go right for them. They can 2-0 the Mongos. They can 2-0 a lot of people. But then the other day, you go into that game against Mouse and you see how big the difference is right now. Even when m0NESY individually is feeling it, he just gets countered perfectly. I do think that G2 could be really dangerous in this event for the reason that there is a lot of teams that have been struggling with building up strong enough fundamentals, so to speak, comparable to the ones of the best teams in the world. So I straight up, I think G2 could go and out-aim a lot of the teams in this event on a good day. But then on a bad day, they could even not make it out of groups, right? I think that's going to be complicated because m0NESY is by far the best player that's going to be playing in this event, I guess. But, well, Xantares is obviously there as well, but m0NESY is the number 1 player in this entire tournament. So things could always go wrong for the team on the other side, but as much as I want to be even a G2 hater because I'm not the biggest fan of Snacks, I gotta say that they could show up and play good Counter-Strike, and they could always be a contender and go and reach the playoffs. I still was contemplating whether I should put them or VP as my dark horse. I just like VP more personally and think they have been more underrated, and think in comparison to G2, Virtus Pro is actually going up. G2 is wobbly, and I think it's obvious there's going to be some changes, and that's not how the team is going to stay. So that's why I'm not giving them too much credit either, but they can also be a pretty interesting dark horse. Moving forward, the penultimate team we're going to be talking about is 3D Max. Now, the reason I'm bringing 3D Max up again is because I'm a big French CS fan, unless you haven't understood. But I honestly think there's reasons to be excited for this team. I feel like Mac has newly found confidence in the last couple of months, and his improved individual performance is obvious. I think Gravity is starting to slowly get into the groove of sometimes being even a bit of a star on the team, honestly. And the individual level that we did see from Body during Pro League, the first stage, and even the second stage where they lose to Vitality and the Mongols, I think this game against Liquid is the one thing that's putting me off. That should have been a 2-0 for 3D Max. And for all of you that watched the game, you probably know that should have been a 2-0 for 3D Max. And if that was a 2-0 for 3D Max and they made it to the next stage, I think we would have been speaking way differently about this team and their chances. I hope they're not going to get under their skin with this one, because the first event that they play with Body, they beat VP, they beat MIBR, they lose to Mouse Eternal Fire, they lose one best of 3 against Soul, that's putting me off massively. Then they go into EPL, they lose one best of 3, that is putting me off massively in the first stage, and then they 2-0 clean sweep, Mind Freak, Heroic, and M80, and then they go into this stage of ESO Pro League, the main stage, they beat Eternal Fire 2-0, they beat the Falcons 2-1, they lose to Vitality, fair enough, they lose to the Mongols, again, as we said, probably the best team in Bucharest, fair enough. And then there's that one best of 3 that's putting me off. That's the one reason that I don't know if I could really get excited, because I do feel like the potential is there. I do believe that they can make playoffs, which they've been fighting to do quite a lot so far this year, to actually make the playoffs of a big LAN event. And they haven't been able to, because they just lose that one best of 3 that is incredibly awkward. And I'm not sure if that's just Botting needing a little bit more time to get implemented in the system and everyone to get readjusted. Obviously, he's a bit of a different player than Joker was, and you're giving a lot of star roles to body, so that's shuffling things around for a lot of other people, and it could create complications initially. I do believe that he's in good individual form, and he's bringing more to the team that than he's actually taken away from other players. But yeah, 3D Max first game is really tough against the Mongols. I still think this could be the breakthrough for them, considering again the top teams aren't there. You're not gonna have your Vitalities. You're not gonna have your Mouse, the teams that you have been losing to in group stages. So I think they should be good, considering that they have been going toe to toe with, let's say, an Eternal Fire so far this season, with a VP this season. I think there's no reason we don't give them credit and think that they are a team that could make it out of the playoffs. And to round it out, for the final team, we're actually going to say Team Liquid. And I'm not talking about this Team Liquid. I'm talking about the Team Liquid with Shui instead of JKS. The reason I believe there's going to be an instant improvement in this Liquid. And I think this is the event to do it. Even though you're starting against Legacy, which again, we said could be a tricky game. Considering Legacy's been playing good in South America, Liquid should be winning this one pretty cleanly. Liquid again has been losing against incredibly good teams, but there has been a big difference obviously between them and the Mongols and Eternal Fire, and sure, you beat 3D Max, but most of the time it's really lackluster. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not the biggest. I usually like Liquid a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of this iteration. With Chewy joining in and with Twists still seeing the game through the eyes of an in-game leader in a way, even though he won't have to speak as much, I think the dynamic that Twist and Shui could form with each other, and the fact that another Polish player is arriving and he's a young Polish IGL, and that could make Ultimate even more comfortable. I think all of those factors could just add up to Liquid going into this event and playing some goddamn good Counter-Strike. Shui's going to be motivated. He's going to be incredibly pumped up, and that is if he plays it with them, right? Which has been unconfirmed, but in a way leaked information. So we are 90%, 95% sure he's going to be playing with them in Bucharest. If that happens, and that's a massive if, because if it doesn't, Liquid could make it out of playoffs. All right, sure, but if that happens, I honestly believe that Liquid could be an incredibly exciting team to watch, and that dynamic with Twist being a star rifle that knows what's going through an IGL's mind, and him being the second most vocal piece, the Oper feeling a little bit more comfortable once he's got a countryman that's around his age as well on the team, Shui wanting to prove himself, Nerds and Naf. Hopefully Naf is going to get a little bit of a boost from the team just working a lot better in general, because he's been slacking a little bit individually, and hopefully that makes Nerds even more comfortable. I do think that this team has a lot of potential with Shui at the helm, and I am excited for Liquid. But yeah, with that being said, those are my go-to teams to watch during the event. This time I decided to look past some of the bigger underdogs, because this is usually the angle that I go with, but this time I decided to focus on the guys on the top more than the others. If you're asking about FaZe, Falcons, and Astralis, I still feel like FaZe and Falcons can do well. That's obvious. They have good players. They can play good Counter-Strike, but I think a team like Virtus.pro deserves a little bit of time to talk about them more. And if Shui goes over and plays that event with Liquid and joins Liquid in general, I think they automatically become a team that is worth watching quite a lot. So yeah, with that being said, we're going to round it out. Of course, make sure to let us know which teams you think are going to do the best. Make sure to let us know which team you think will be the #1 favorite to win this entire thing, and who do you want to see lift the trophy in the absence of the greats right now in the world ranking. With that being said, thank you for watching. Shout out again to SkinClub. Shout out to all of you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm going to see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.